Hello, everyone. Welcome to Moneymaker Monday, and even more auspiciously, I want to thank each and every person. Have a Merry Christmas, and obviously, this is the holiday time, so this takes on a huge meaning for a lot of people, and not just Christian people. There's a lot of people that Christmas has become so marketable, and it's become such a marketing thing that now so many people celebrate Christmas in their own way, and it brings me back to obviously the story of the birth of Christ, and reminds me the fact that this is more than just about Santa Claus and presents. It's also a very auspicious day, carries a lot of meaning. So what I wanted to talk about, I was very inspired to talk about this. Today's talk is called Resurrection Monday. And what do I mean by Resurrection Monday? Obviously, the actual day of resurrection is Sunday, but today is Monday, and I thought it was pretty apropos to bring up this particular talk as it relates to businesses and as it relates to life. So I'm going to tell you that there's obviously the crucifixion, the way that we know the crucifixion, the way we've heard it been told in stories, is that Jesus was nailed to the cross and on Friday, and then 3 days later he resurrected and came back to life, and that he was the example for his followers, for the people that that believed in him, that he could come back. And we see this in other holy texts as well, in other ways. I believe that while resurrection is synonymous, hey Fernando, hey Daisy, hey Justice, how you doing? Merry Christmas to all of you, Sujata. Resurrection, while it's a Christian terminology, typically, there's a lot of other examples of resurrection that I observe in other areas of text in other religions. Like, for example, the Israelites, Moses walking through the desert and, taking the Israelites to the promised land, walking through the desert for 40 years. I think that's a version of a resurrection as well. I think the fact that Buddha left his palace, he left this beautiful palace to let go of all material attachments and connect with the people, the suffering of the people, that's also a version of the resurrection, a resurrection. Or Lord Ram in the mythical Hindu text of the Ramayana, where when his wife Sita was abducted, doing a puja, doing a prayer to Ma Durga, and realizing when there was only 107 lotuses and he was doing a prayer for 108 lotuses, that he would take a knife and offer his eye as the 108th lotus. And then, of course, Ma Durga came down and gave her blessing. So there's examples in all kinds of text about resurrections in their own way. And I think the relevance of it, the reason why these are timeless stories, is because they're just as relevant today as they were back then. And I believe that these stories, or whatever you want to call them, these lessons, they bring up great points in how to live life, and how to not just live life, but also how life is. Life is not there to be a life where it goes seamless for you, where things just go smoothly. I think that there is a purpose to the pain. There's a purpose to adversity. And that's why these lessons are so valuable, is because they teach us that. And I think that what I've learned in my own life is that, sometimes I think that God is maybe giving me this setback, but really, whatever setbacks you have in life, God is, he's not setting you back. He's preparing you. He's developing you. That's what I believe is, God is developing you. And by the way, I know a lot of people talk about the universe, and, I say God. So hopefully that doesn't offend anybody that I'm going to mention God every once in a while on these money makers. It wouldn't be authentic for me to do it any other way. But what I want to do is, obviously, I want to bring it to business, because this talk is always, this forum is for business people that are business owners or want to be business owners or want to do something in the realm of business. So one of the things I want to tackle today is just the attitude of business, because a lot of people say that they're unlucky. I hear their stories, and whether they say it directly or they say it, they imply it. A lot of people think that they have this misfortune and that people are luckier than them and that they haven't been dealt the same hand of cards as somebody else. And I, again, bring it back to the resurrection about recreating yourself, being able to get through adversity. And one of the biggest figures that comes to mind when I think of resurrection in business is Steve Jobs. For those of you who know the story of Steve Jobs, at the age of 19, 20 years old, him and Woz create the company Apple. And obviously, for the first 10 years, they have tremendous success. They go from 0 to $2 billion in revenue. They have 4,000 people working for them, only to have Steve Jobs get fired from the company he created. And how can that be? Steve Jobs talks about, how could I get fired from the company that I created? Well, apparently the board, he didn't get along with some people in the company as they created the board of directors and the CFO and so on and so forth, and he got fired, and at the time it was one of the darkest places in his life. It was one of the scariest moments. He thought he was a public failure. He describes it as dropping the baton in his destiny, and like not being able to pass the baton to the next generation of entrepreneurs, that he had dropped the ball, that he had failed, not just himself, but failed people. But what he also describes, and this is maybe the lesson here, is that he was still in love. He had not lost his love for the work he was doing. So he was rejected, but he was still in love. And I want you to think about that, because you can get rejected and still be in love. You can have a setback in business and still have the passion and the thirst and the taste and the hunger for the business, even with the adversity. And he describes it. He says the heaviness of being successful was now all of a sudden replaced with this lightness of creativity. So all of a sudden he looked at life in this opportunistic way, that instead of looking at life like, woe is me, or I'm going to be a victim, he looked at it like, what a great opportunity to be a learner. What a great opportunity to become a beginner again. I've fallen off the mountain, but now I'm at the bottom of the mountain and I can create and I can do all kinds of things. So, these are our attitudinal muscles that we get to flex, that we get to shift our perspective so that we can create a result that empowers us and have empowering thoughts. We talked last week about emotional intelligence, and that's one thing that I think that Steve Jobs was really great at doing, is freeing himself up to be creative even during the setback. And of course, for those of you that know or don't know, Steve Jobs created Next, and he created Pixar after getting fired from Apple. And Pixar ended up creating Toy Stories, which was the first of its kind. It was a digital animated film production, the first of its kind. And obviously the rest is history. Pixar is a multi-billion-dollar company. They're the leaders of computer animation film production. And Next, his other company, eventually got bought out by Apple. So the funny thing is that the company that he got fired from ended up not only taking him back, buying his company, but making him the CEO, like making him the leader of the company again. So it's just a remarkable thing. And, when Steve Jobs talks about it, he said that this was like one of the greatest moments in his life, but he thought it was one of his darkest moments at the time. But what he's able to do now is connect the dots and see that there was no way that any of this was going to happen if he got fired from Apple. There would have been no Pixar. There would have been no Next. There would have been none of that. And yet, he said that while I can connect the dots now, I couldn't connect the dots at the time. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them going backwards. And what he talks about is having faith. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about having faith that all your adversities, all the things that your trials and tribulations, all the pain and suffering in your life is preparing you. That there's no waste in this universe. That everything that you're doing today, even your failures, serve a purpose in developing you, growing you. And my question to you is, what is your resurrection? How do you get to resurrect your life? What is your comeback story? And how does this get to end? Because you get to write the story. You know, I think that it's important to talk about the trials and tribulations of your life, but remember to finish the story. You have the ability, you have the pen to finish the story. And that's what I really wanted today to be about, is to really harness all of those sufferings, but at the end of the day, don't settle. Still be in love with the things that you're in love with. Find the things that you're in love with if you don't know already. It's the only way you're going to do great work in this planet, in this life, is by actually loving something. That's how you do great work in something, is by actually having an affinity, an affection of love for it. So, with that in mind, that story of Steve Jobs, it connects with some of you. Maybe it doesn't resonate with other people. I think one of the biggest things that I hear when people talk about when they hear that Steve Jobs comeback story, is they say, yeah, but JD, I'm no Steve Jobs. And that is, that's a relevant point. Nobody is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs, and you are you. And at the same time, I felt compelled to tell a story of somebody who's not necessarily your typical entrepreneur, not necessarily somebody that I just feel like she's more relatable to ordinary people, and that's J.K. Rowling. And some of you may know the story of J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling was, at one point, when she was writing the book of Harry Potter, she had probably written 1 or 2 chapters only, and all of a sudden her mother died. And it was an all of a sudden thing. It was an unexpected thing. It wasn't like she was, scheduled to die. Like this was a shocker. And the funny thing is that her mom didn't even know she was writing the book. So Rowling just never got around to telling her mom that she was writing this book. And it was a really dark time in her life. And for her, the only therapy was writing the book. And she eventually took her pain and harnessed it and put it into the book. And her pain would become Harry's pain, as Harry lost his parents in the first book of Harry Potter. He loses his parents. And, later on in J.K. Rowling's life, she had a miscarriage. Death came to her doorstep again. She was divorced. She was homeless at one point with a small child, and just thinking like she was the biggest failure in the world. And, this obsession with death, this crazy thing about death always showing up in her life, that was the inspiration for the character Voldemort. And for those of you that know the books, Voldemort had an obsession with immortality. And J.K. Rowling says we're all afraid of death. So it was something that was powerful for her to share her pain through the character Voldemort. And, eventually, through all the trials and tribulations, there was also an inspiration for the characters called the Dementors that she described. So you see where I'm going with this. Basically, J.K. Rowling was able to take her pain and harness it and actually use it in her storybook of Harry Potter. And again, the rest is history. We all know these successful stories of Steve Jobs and J.K. Rowling, and we're like, of course, well, obviously. But there's an obviously for you too, if you're just willing to get through the adversity and get to the other side. People will be saying the same, they'll be singing your praises the same way. Well, of course you did it, because you were able to overcome the pain, because you're great. But here's the thing, is we're all great. And every one of us, every great person, every normal person, everybody has a cross to bear. So what is your cross to bear? I think that you get to share your story, tell your biggest tragedies. But again, like I said, make sure that your biggest tragedies become your greatest invention, because you're relentless and you're not willing to give up. Take your heartbreak, all your heartbreaks in life, and, finish the story. I think that's what today is about for me, is the word resurrection to me is about getting back up. And I think that that is the greatest ally that any one of us can have. It's not your talent. It's not your ability to get things done. It's not your ability to convince people of something. I think your greatest talent, ally in business and in life is your ability to get back up. Because you will be asked to get back up. But I think seizing the bigger vision, having the vision at the forefront, is the key to all of this. That's why you get back up, is because you know your what, you know what you want, but you also know why you want what you want. Your why, that's your emotional buy-in. Why does this matter to you? Why does this business matter to you? Why is it so important for you to be successful that you're willing to go through the ups and downs, that you're willing to do and walk the path that maybe nobody else walked? Maybe you're the first one to walk this path. Maybe you're the first one to walk this path in your family. Maybe you're the first person to walk this path in your community. So there has to be a why. There has to be an emotional buy-in that's going to get you through the tough times. And finally, the last thing I want to tell each and every one of you is none of you were created in a romantic relationship with your mother and father. I don't believe that is why you're here, that this was just some sort of event that led to your birth. I mean, I guess on the physical plane that's true, but I think that you were spoken into this world. Each and every one of you was spoken into this world. There was something that was needed, and God spoke your name. And then you were called, you were sent here. I believe that each and every one of us was sent here to play a role, and only you know what that role is. Only you know why you're truly here. And, you might be a hairdresser, you might be an accountant, whatever you do for a living, just remember one thing, you're a healer. Each and every one of you is a healer. And you're all here to heal. You're all here to heal each other and serve humanity. So your vision, your success in life has a direct correlation with service. Service to humanity, service to others. And when you're going through your tough times, when you don't feel like having your resurrection, when you just want to stay down and stay on the cross and be the victim, remember all the people that get to win when you win. All the people that benefit from your success. So that's my talk today for Resurrection Monday. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a quick one today. And I want to also share with you one last thing, which is for those of you that know, I know a lot of you know and have been inquiring, asking about Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is the tour that is being put together next year from February 15th to the 19th. It is a powerful, powerful tour that is happening. Michelle Giovanni is the creator of it, and there's going to be some amazing, amazing trainers. Jackie Rodriguez, who's going to be doing Love Your Curvas, and she's a mindset and fitness coach. Maurice is a yoga and a spirituality coach. Michelle, of course, is the same. She's also a spirituality and a mindset coach. And I am the money and business coach for the tour. It's happening in Samaná, which for those of you that don't know is in the Dominican Republic, aka Paradise. And if you want to know more about the event, and if you enjoy talks like this is going to be some of the framework for some of the talks that we're going to be having out there in greater detail. But it is the website that you can find out more information is www.callingallgamechangers.com. Again, callingallgamechangers.com. The retreat is, I believe, about 80% full. We have about 4 seats left. 4 to 5 seats left. So if you're interested, definitely reach out to Michelle or to me through Facebook, to Jackie or to Maurice, or just go on the website and you can book your reservation. And lastly, just want to tell each and every one of you that the greatest days of your life lay ahead. I truly mean that when you put in your hard work, when you put in your perseverance, when you get over that adversity, what's on the other side of that adversity, when you're able to connect the dots, that's where the magic lies. So we love you, and as always, see you at the top. Take care.